Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, March 15th. I'm your host, Tom Moore. The Indiana game is in 171 days. The game against Michigan in 255 days. We are talking Ohio State football again today. And we're going to be talking today about one of the most popular players on the team, one of the most popular players in all of college football. That is junior wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. He has done a little bit of everything for Ohio State over the last couple of years, turned into one of the biggest stars in the sport as a sophomore, had a monster season, made some absolutely ridiculous plays in a bunch of different games, and was a big part in the Buckeyes getting to the college football playoff and building up a pretty big lead against Georgia in the Peach Bowl before he got knocked out of the game, and the Bulldogs came back to beat the Buckeyes. So, earlier last week, during the first week of spring football, we got a chance to talk to Marvin Harrison for the first time since the night of that Peach Bowl, to really kind of get a little bit of a look back at that game, some of the things that happened in that game, some of the things that have happened since, and where he's sort of headed next, goals for this season, all that kind of stuff. So today you're going to be hearing directly from Marvin Harrison. We're going to be playing 20 questions with Marvin Harrison here. 20 questions, 20 different answers from Marvin on all sorts of different topics. Let's start with him at punt returner. That was the first period of the first practice of the spring, and there's Marvin Harrison back as the first string punt returner, and everyone kind of looked at each other and went, that's new. Why are they doing that? So, all right, Marvin Harrison, what is the deal with playing punt returner this spring?
Like that role?
I'll just go back there more so just enhance ball tracking skills and everything like that. There's a good chance I won't be back there at any point during the season. But, emergency situation, if I need to go back there, I think I can.
So it doesn't sound like that's going to be any kind of a permanent move, but if he does end up back there, is there any sort of concern then about maybe an increased risk of injury when he's back there?
No, not really. I don't really understand the concept of that thing. Anytime you put a dynamic player back there, you can change the game, especially teams like that. So I wouldn't really say it's an injury risk. I think Emeka did it last year. Garrett has done it. Jackson has done it. So we've obviously had dynamic players back there. So I wouldn't think it's an injury risk at all.
Harrison kind of burst onto the scene in the Rose Bowl last season, where he put up 3 touchdowns in the win over Utah, and then put up a monster season, Biletnikoff finalist last year, and just highlight reel catches all over the place. So where is there still left for him to improve before he likely heads off to the NFL next year? What is he working on this year and this spring to get better?
There's always room to get better everywhere, whether that's getting in and out of your breaks faster, ball skills. But I think one thing in particular that I'm kind of focused on was just making plays after the catch. They're trying to turn 5-yard catches into 20 or 20-yard catches into 60, things like that. So I think that's one thing I'm conscious about, just going into next year and practicing for that.
Harrison was obviously one of the big stories the night of the Peach Bowl loss to Georgia. We actually haven't gotten a chance to talk to him since that Peach Bowl, so we finally got a chance to get some answers on that night and some of the things that happened that night and then the follow-up to that night. So let's start with the hit that knocked him out of that game. Did he view that as a cheap shot?
I don't really know. I think, obviously he's just trying to make a play on the football. It's the ref's decision to make that call, whether he thinks it's targeting or not. It's kind of up to him. I'm not the one making the call.
After that hit knocked him out, Harrison was still on the sidelines. It seemed like he was sort of lobbying to get back into the game at times. Ohio State's medical staff did not let him back into the game, obviously. But just how was he feeling? What was going on in his head on the sidelines after that hit?
I think, just the adrenaline. You're probably in just the moment. You want to go back out there and play. But I think I definitely respect the trainer's decision to keep me out. It's in their best interest to keep me healthy. Like I said, just past football as well.
It is safe to say that most Ohio State fans probably have a few what-ifs from that Peach Bowl. What if they had just gotten one more stop? What if Marvin Harrison had not gotten knocked out of the game? What if he had been out there for that last drive? Would that have been enough to swing the balance? Does Marvin Harrison have any what-ifs about that last drive of that game against Georgia?
Yeah, I think there's always, what-ifs. I know I can make an impact when I'm out there on the field. I would love to be out there, especially the whole fourth quarter of the college football playoff game, but I got to live with that at this point.
Something you might have seen in the weeks following that Peach Bowl was a Georgia player, the guy who knocked Harrison out of that game with that hit in the end zone, signed a photo, autographed it, with the caption "Night Night" on it. That did not go over real well on Ohio State Twitter. Harrison himself commented on it the night of that photo. And the night that happened, and to give you a little behind the scenes here, because I ended up playing sort of an indirect role in that whole thing. When I saw that photo, I thought, boy, that's not particularly tasteful. But then I thought, wait a minute, I recognize that picture. I took that picture. And yes, that was my picture that they used to sell on that Georgia website. No, they didn't have my permission to do that. So I contacted the seller and said, hey, you don't have the rights to that photo. You've got to take it down. Tweeted that out just so people didn't think that I had sold my photo to this guy for that purpose. And that's kind of where I left it. And sort of behind the scenes, got in contact with the guy. He sent back all of the old unsold photos so I could destroy them, ensure they were destroyed. He made a donation to Columbus Children's Hospital for the proceeds for the stuff that he did sell. And that was kind of it. A couple weeks ago, let my kids take those photos and destroy them in our fire pit in our backyard, just so now you know that's what happened with those photos. No more Marvin Harrison night-night photos sold on the internet anymore. So there you go. There's the answer to that story in case you were wondering about that. And if you're watching on YouTube, you're watching the video, and if you're listening on the podcast, you can watch the photos burn up in the fire pit if you'd like to on the YouTube version of this show. But after that, last week, Marvin Harrison himself was asked about that photo. What did he think? He didn't seem particularly amused by it the night that it first leaked out on the internet back in early February. But what did Harrison himself think about that picture?
I just kind of laughed at it. It was kind of funny to me, given the play and the circumstance. I don't know exactly if he signed it or someone signed it for him, or what the logistics of that is, but I thought it was kind of funny.
Harrison was a finalist for the Biletnikoff Award last year as the nation's top wide receiver. He did not win it. Jalen Hyatt of Tennessee ended up taking home that trophy. Ohio State wide receiver coach Brian Hartline said earlier in the month that anyone with two eyes knows that Marvin Harrison should have been the one to win the Biletnikoff last year. So does it bother Marvin at all that he didn't win that?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, definitely does bother me, because I think that's one of the things you look back on as your college career. You can point to that. I won the Best Receiver in Country Award for that year. I think I definitely deserved it. Jalen had a great year as well at Tennessee, but I think I deserved it.
One thing that's going to have a pretty significant impact on Marvin Harrison's production this fall is his quarterback. Now, who will that quarterback be? Well, we're all still trying to figure that out together. What is it like for him playing with two different QB1s this spring? You've got Kyle McCord, you got Devin Brown, no more CJ Stroud, so you don't know who that QB1 is going to be this fall. So what is that like with those two guys sort of splitting that first team rep this year?
I mean, as a receiver, you got to make things work, no matter who's back there. When I came as a freshman, it was kind of a battle of three. I think Jack Miller, Kyle McCord, and CJ. So I kind of learned then, and then obviously a new battle this year. So as a receiver, just make their job easier. They can throw it to me. I'm going to come down with it. So that's all it really is.
It's always a storyline around the Ohio State football team when the quarterback and his wide receiver, for example, are roommates. We always talk, we get that goes back to Dwayne Haskins and Austin Mack are roommates, and does that give them some kind of a special connection, or it's something like that? It's one of those things we talk about because we talk about Ohio State football 365 days. We get to talk about something, so there's something we talk about. There is a history between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyle McCord as well. They, of course, played football together as high school, so their connection goes back years even before they got to Ohio State together. So Marvin Harrison was asked, do we make too much of that kind of connection, that long-term existing connection between those two guys?
I think we definitely have connection. It's going back since we were sophomores in high school. Obviously, the more you throw with someone, the more connection you get. And he kind of knows what I'm doing. I know what he's doing. But I've developed that connection, too, with Devin over the time. He's been here last year a little bit. And then, obviously, a couple practices here and an all-season throwing with him as well.
Kyle McCord was obviously quite a talented quarterback in high school. He was a five-star prospect coming out of high school. Obviously had an Ohio State offer, won state championship. I mean, obviously a pretty darn good high school quarterback. But what was Kyle McCord like as a player back in high school?
I think he can make every throw, no matter where I'm out in the field. I could be, on the opposite side. He could be on a far hash. He can still get the ball there. Whether I'm in the boundary, he can throw the deep ball, intermediate. His timing is very precise, so that's probably the best thing to like about it.
One advantage that Marvin Harrison has over pretty much anyone else in that building is because he's seen Kyle McCord so much more and so much longer than pretty much anyone else in that building has, he has a much better sense of where McCord has really improved, where he's really stepped up his game since the end of that high school career together. So where has Kyle McCord really gotten better since getting to Ohio State?
I think obviously the arm talent is still there. It was always there. Just more so the mental aspect of the game. He spends a lot of time watching film and just trying to anticipate throws. That's probably where he's grown the most.
The breakdown between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown this spring tends to boil down to two kind of simple advantages, one that each has over the other. McCord maybe has a little bit of a stronger arm than Devin Brown. Brown is maybe a little bit more mobile than Kyle McCord is. So Marvin Harrison was asked, is there really a big mobility gap between those two quarterbacks?
I think Devin probably has the athletic edge more so than Kyle. But I think, when Kyle needs to run, I think he can run definitely, as you guys see, like CJ, because a lot of talk about him being mobile. But then when he needed to run, he can run. I think Kyle can do the same thing.
We've talked about Kyle McCord as an on-field player and his legs and his arm. But what about Kyle McCord as a leader? Kyle McCord has obviously been a leader of a team that Marvin Harris has been a part of for a number of years now, going back to high school. So what makes Kyle McCord such a good leader in Marvin Harrison's eyes?
I think he kind of, first off the field, he's somebody you can talk to about anything. He's going to talk to you about anything, just answer your questions. He's going to always help you and be there for you. So I think that's one thing he's always had since, in high school. And then obviously going into college, he's developed more of a leadership role on the field. And I was just calling people out and, just being a quarterback. So that's one thing I've seen him grow a lot.
As one of the most popular players in college football and the son of a former NFL Hall of Famer, Marvin Harrison has plenty of things he could get distracted by: NIL deals, all sorts of agents, all sorts of NFL talk, all that kind of stuff. And he really has done a pretty good job of just blocking all of that stuff out. So how do you sort of block out all those distractions to be able to focus on football?
I'm always a very humble person, humble guy, humble player. It's just, obviously, I know there's a lot more work to be done. Obviously, we didn't accomplish any goals we did as a team last year. So obviously, whatever I did last year wasn't enough.
How many people? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think I'm not really getting too big-headed or anything like that.
We mentioned NIL just a minute ago on that previous question. And how does Marvin Harrison, choose to deal with all that? Because he is, as one of the bigger names in college football, he obviously could be raking in lots and lots of NIL money and has really more or less chosen to push that stuff to the side and not really worry about it and just sort of focus on football. And what's the secret to NIL and how Marvin Harrison has sort of avoided having that become a distraction? Well, his dad handles that. His dad, of course, Marvin Harrison Sr., NFL Hall of Fame wide receiver, has a little bit of experience in dealing with the press and dealing with advertising and dealing with all the things that go around with being a football player at a pretty darn high level. So how much does it help to have a dad like that who has dealt with this stuff all already?
One thing he always says, just focus on football, though. He's going to take care of all the NIL stuff. Like you said, first you got to keep the main thing. All the NIL stuff is not even possible if you're not performing on the field. So that's what I really focus on.
Now, Harrison is going to be playing at least some this spring, and we'll see how much that really ends up being. Sometimes those veteran guys take a few fewer reps than they might have otherwise, and you let some of the younger guys get a chance to go on the field. And those younger guys are going to get a lot of chances this spring because Emeka Egbuka is out, Julian Fleming is out. So those younger guys are getting a lot of chances to rep, and in a lot of cases, chances to rep with the ones. So what has impressed Marvin Harrison about those young guys so far this spring?
They came in to work. That's one thing I loved about them. They're always out there with me on the jug machine. I come in here sometimes, and they're on there, and I'm not even here. So I love that about them.
Even going back to high school, Marvin Harrison Jr. has always been known for his work ethic, and that was something you heard immediately from folks around the program as soon as he got to Ohio State as a true freshman back in 2021. So is that something that you have to learn when you get to college, is how to work and how to really do work at the college kind of level to be ready to play at a college, major college football program like Ohio State? Or is that something you just have, you're just born with?
I think both kind of, see the older players and see what they're doing and like, okay, this is what they got with the work they're putting in. I kind of have to do the same thing, but I always kind of had that coming in here as a freshman. So I think something you learn, and also sometimes you just have it.
Harrison has talked about some of those younger guys and sort of starting to get out and be working with him more when Marvin is out there putting in some extra work. Now some of those younger guys are out there with him too. So When did he start to notice some of those young guys out there with him, putting in all of that extra work?
Well, Reese Stockstill has always been out there with me. Xavier Johnson, Mecca comes out there sometimes, Jaden. So it's more than just me out there most times. But I think now he's seeing DBs come out there, running backs come out there, kind of seeing that this offseason. So I guess they kind of look at me like, okay, it kind of worked for him, so let me kind of put in the same work.
And finally, you heard him mention the name Reese earlier. That's Reese Stockstill. He's a wide receiver, a walk-on wide receiver. He had a couple of muffed punts in his chance to return punts against Indiana late last season. And that was kind of you finally get an opportunity, and then you have a couple mistakes. That has to be a pretty tough thing. So as someone who is kind of a leader himself, Marvin Harrison Jr., how do you lift up someone like that after a tough game?
We all make mistakes. Not to throw Mecca under the bus here, but I think Mecca had dropped a punt, against Rutgers, whatever team that was, and Reese kind of went back there, and obviously a situation happened, but we've all kind of gathered around him, and we've told him he's a great returner. First of all, he's a great player, a great person. He's out here working with us, just as much as I'm working. So we all make mistakes. Today I dropped a pass. He's kind of helping me out, so we do that for each other. So just teammates being teammates.
Well, there you have it. 20 questions and answers from Marvin Harrison Jr. Probably not the last time we're going to hear from Marvin during the course of this year. He will be quite a standout figure, maybe a little bit this spring, but then obviously much more heading into the fall and into the college football season. A really leading candidate for the Biletnikoff Award this year, possibly a Heisman Trophy candidate this year. And you have heard him talk not only about those individual goals, but those team goals, and the fact that they didn't reach any of those goals last year. Beating Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national championship. Well, if Ohio State does any of those, he will probably be a big part of those this year as well. So I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about Marvin Harrison Jr. this year at BuckeyeHuddle.com, but we'll be talking about all the rest of the Ohio State Buckeyes as well. We have a lot of team coverage, recruiting coverage, X's and O's and scheme coverage. How are the Buckeyes going to work to scheme to get Marvin Harrison open when opposing defenses are trying to get him locked down? Well, our scheme experts, our X's and O's gurus at BuckeyeHuddle.com will have the answer on that. Tony, Kevin, and I will be covering the team, doing their interviews, all that fun stuff, covering all those games, all those practices, all that stuff. And then will Ohio State bring in another Marvin Harrison Jr. in this recruiting class? Well, our recruiting gurus, Alex Gleitman and Mark Givler, will be covering all of that. So should be a lot of stuff to talk about this year, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and we would love to have you there to talk about all of it with us. We have a fantastic community, very active board, lots of fun conversations, lots of good questions and answers. You can be a part of all that fun at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.